Welcome to I think this is the kickoff Misty lunch of the semester. So
This is the inaugural Friday.
well, thank you all for being here. My name is Katrina Kennett, and this is Todd Lash.
Hello.
And we're going to both introduce ourselves a little more, but also talk about EdCampCU, a tiny bit about its history. We're going to talk about, but we're really focus a lot of today on what's upcoming for the Fall EdCampCU, and then take a good part of the lunchtime to actually facilitate conversations in the spirit of an ed camp. And then we'll pull it all back together for the end of the lunch. All right. So to begin with, we have, just to briefly say, how did we get here? So I used to live in the Northeast. I taught in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And as a teacher, there were a lot of ed camps in the Northeast. There's Ed Camp Boston and Ed Camp Connecticut. And so I would attend to these different ed camps, and I was just so excited about the networking and there's such an energy, right? And you're going in and people are saying, oh, there's these new apps, or I did this in my classroom. And I felt every time I walked away, I was really inspired by what had just happened. And so I did an iteration of ed camps in my classroom, which I called ed cafes. And then one of my students for her senior project actually ran Ed Camp Plymouth. So she put together an entire, it was actually student-run and student-led ed camp, but invited participants from the community and other teachers in the high schools and stuff. And then I moved here to Champaign-Urbana with this wealth of ed camp knowledge, but also wanting to find out what opportunities and people were here and if this would be a really good model for this community. And that is how I met Todd.
Yeah, actually at the conference. Katrina, oh, that's right, I gotta wear this thing. Thanks. I'm just gonna hold it. So Katrina and I met. She was presenting at a local conference, a local tech conference here in town, and I had heard of ed camps, never had been to one, so I knew only a little bit about them, and was really excited about the prospect of having one here in town after having gone through her session at that conference. And so we talked with Matt Sly, who was another one of the co-founders of EdCampCU, about having our own. And what was 2 years ago, January, we had our very first ed camp, and it was held at the College of Ed. And we had about, 60 people come? Yeah, had about 60 people come, which we thought was a great success. And folks from all walks of life. We had students, we had grad students, we had faculty, we had local teachers, we had an administrator from Urbana Public Schools, some parents come. So a fairly diverse group of folks. And we're going to touch on diversity again here in a little bit later. But so since then, we've had 3 others?
This will be our fifth.
This is our 5th, right? Okay, so wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So this is our 5th one coming up. Ed camps traditionally have been associated with conferences many times. So like if you would go to the ISTE conference, for instance, the big educational technology conference that's held every year, there's always at least one and sometimes multiple ed camps that pop up around that. There also have been these things called coffee queues, which are very similar to ed camps and often happen in the morning over coffee. So a lot of different iterations on ed camps are happening. But they do kind of come from this ed tech background. And while we're not opposed to having ed tech at all in our ed camp, ours has kind of evolved into something we feel is a little bit more. And
I can talk a little bit about that.
do you want to talk about it? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I don't remember that if we've ever like sat down and like purposely, like it kind of happened, and then we just kind of massaged the change as we saw it.
As it happening.
Yeah.
So for those of you too who are, if you're not at all, I'll give you like a 10-second, what is an ed camp? So it is a participant-led conference in the sense that it's also participant-built. So in the first half hour of the conference, you actually build the schedule. You come in with as a blank slate, you build the schedule, and then it runs like a conference because you know what sessions are and where they'll be. So often these would be like topics, like in all those ed camps I've been to, and often at these other places, it's like, how do I use Google, or like Google Classroom in my English class, or like bringing project-based learning or Fab Lab into these topics, or maybe a question of sorts. But we decided from the first ed camp to kind of tweak that premise a little bit, and so all of our sessions are always a question. That's what it is, your question of different scales and sizes, but that instead of just being a flat topic, it is actually a question. So how do I bring what does it mean to bring social justice and technology together? Like how do I have different, how do I do different like types of design thinking with my students, right? And so the variety of sometimes content area and sometimes grade level, but always sessions oriented towards a question. So that's one thing that is different about our EdCamp. Actually, about a month ago, I was talking to the leader of the EdCamp organization, the executive director, and she was saying, like, not only is that different, but the ways in which you guys are doing 3 a year, because we're now at the point where we do 1 in the winter at the College of Education, 1 in June in the Urbana schools, or hosted by the Urbana schools, and then 1 here in the fall. This one will be partnered with the Pygmalion Festival. So we're in Champaign, we're at the College of Ed, we're in Urbana, but it's not owned by any of these educational or community organizations, but instead looking to intentionally partner and be with, because we know the conversations and these questions are being asked in all of these different areas, but aren't necessarily bringing together all of those different constituents, right? In my grad school classes, we ask these questions, right? In the schools, teachers are asking these questions, parents are asking these questions, but where are the opportunities for them to come together and have dialogues about what those questions mean and what they are and so forth, right? And so she was really impressed with not only the 3 and that model and the questions, but also how she described our EdCamp as very lean. Very lean. And I was like, yes. Because there are some EdCamps that get all kinds of sponsorships and have grab bags and have the iPad mini at the end of the day, and who very much become about the performance of EdCamp. And not to say like there's really great things that happen at those EdCamps. I've been to many of them. But I think over and over again, what was compelling about focusing on the conversations in our community is saying, how can EdCampCU provide a series of intermittent but consistent opportunities for these conversations to happen, right? I'll see you in 4 months. Okay, we're asking these questions. This is great. This is really interesting. Things might come out of it, but I'll see you in January. Okay, this is great. I'll see you in June, right? And so to set up this 3-part opportunity, right, that you know it's going to be there, and then you can pull in other people as we keep asking the questions that are pertinent to education in this community.
I think too, just to piggyback on that, I think one of the things that's different about EdCampCU is that when we ask these questions, what we're really focused on is knowing that they're being asked in homes and in schools and in classrooms here at the university, but can we put together those voices that are all coming from different contexts? So it's very much contextual, I think, because they're happening in isolation, but how can we help to provide the context that they can all come together and have that conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And CU is a good place for this model because we do have all of these different institutions, the university, the local schools. CU is very complex politically. There's a lot of politics going on. For instance, we've gone out of our way to try and invite folks from the Champaign School District to come to our events this fall, and I will be highly surprised if we see anybody from their administration, partially because they're trying to get a referendum passed, and they're not going to want to do anything that's seen as overly political or say the wrong thing or whatever. So there are inherent politics involved in all these kind of things, and I think the people that come don't shy away from that for the most part, right?
All right, you're gonna start talking about, so what does this fall EdCamp, especially as we say we're partnering with the Pygmalion Festival, what does this look like? Right, so
previously we hadn't really partnered with anybody. We had done an EdCamp with Urbana schools, which was great. But one of our ongoing missions is how do we make EdCamp bigger? How do we get more people involved? How do we increase the size of the conversation? And so we came up with the idea of, hey, there's this great thing, Pygmalion, that comes around every year, and thousands of people go to it. And we said, well, this looks a lot like already the South by Southwest EDU festival that happens in Austin every year, which is, as you know, there's also a big music festival in Austin. And so the music fest and the educational fest and all these different, there's a film fest, they all kind of happen within the same span of time there. And so we approached the organizers of Pygmalion and said, hey, what do you guys think about trying to, you're almost there already anyway, all you lack is an educational component, right? What do you think about trying this out and seeing what you think of it? And so that's kind of how we got to where we're at. And so we are officially on the Pygmalion bill right now. And we'll kind of be kicking things off on Friday the 16th with a screening of the film Most Likely to Succeed, which, if you go to its website, it's won a ton of awards. And I want to be really clear, we're not showing this film because we subscribe to all of its views, or we're not promoting the film itself. The film screening is another attempt at getting dialogue going. Right? And so there are going to be people that come and wholeheartedly agree with what the film has to say, and there'll be people that come and say, oh no, that film is way too technocentric and blah, 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 blah. But that's fine. All we want is we want the dialogue, right? And so the film is yet another vehicle for a dialogue, I think, right?
Absolutely. And so then on Saturday morning, Saturday, September 17th, you're all invited, we will host EdCampCU. We're actually going to have it in our first fully community space. We're going to be at the Illini Terminal, the Illinois Terminal. So that will be, we're going to be upstairs in the event space that they have there. And we'll go from 8:30 to 12:30. We found in the last few ed camps, sometimes they start at 8, and the ones that start at 8, people kind of roll in closer to 8:30 anyway, but since that first part is building the schedule, we really, in some ways it is also like you drinking your coffee and sitting down with people and eating pastries, for sure, but it is also building the schedule. And so we decided that 8:30 is a much friendlier time to get things going. And that as it ends at 12:30, it will be kicking off into the Pygmalion Food Festival. So there'll be food trucks and all kinds of lovely events downtown, which we're really excited about. All right.
Should we watch that?
Yeah, let's watch the trailer for Most Likely to Succeed.
Where's the discussion? I assume they are going to have a 7:30 meeting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll have a short discussion in the theater, and then what we really encourage folks to do is come back on Saturday morning, and we'll make sure that we have a dedicated stream during ed camp for a follow-up discussion.
We're hoping too that there will be some of us who go out into into the downtown Champaign area right at the right post. So we'll talk very briefly, and then I'm going to go to Esquire. I'm going to be at Esquire. I'm going to be talking about this. But Friday night of the first night of the festival, kind of just the general excitement and vibrancy of downtown Champaign, it was pretty difficult to lock down a particular space. So therefore we're hoping we will carry on the conversation the next morning. All right.
We divide the day up in high schools into bits of time, into 40 or 50-minute blocks typically, and then we ring bells and people start to shuffle around the building and do something else. That's an organizational device, it's not an educational principle.
10 university heads in 1890 said, in 11th grade, everyone should learn chemistry. In senior year, everyone should learn physics. A lot of these subjects are great, but these priorities were dictated 124 years ago.
The old blue-collar industrial model of education is already gone. We're already living in its wake.
What happens to society when hundreds of millions of people have that aimless, rudderless feeling of, I've been replaced by a very small box? I don't know if there's a solution.
We all learn in different ways. This isn't the way to do it. This is the way that I did it.
If the assignment is you get it back and you crumple it up and throw it in the trash can, that's kind of one student experience. And if the assignment is to produce something that you're going to present to professionals in the field, that's completely changing the whole dynamic.
We are trying to have that type of perplexity and curiosity get inculcated in our students. Saying your parents, all your friends' parents, and a bunch of people you don't know are gonna be here to see the work you did. It creates an aspect about authenticity, because we are creating something for an audience. The things I think in life that give us some of the greatest satisfaction is making something that wasn't there before.
And I can't wait for that moment when it does work and I'm completely done with it. And it's all news. It'll be one of the greatest moments of my life.
The kids have that feeling, it's transformative. I made this, and everyone's coming to look at it.
see there's a ton of issues that were just brought up in that trailer. What were some of the topics that you heard discussed there?
I see you saw my mouth this
So obviously, history of educational thought, right? And why we have the system that we have today. That was one. Right? Project-based learning got brought up. The maker movement was kind of put front and center.
Silos.
Yeah, like right. Okay, so kind of the bureaucracy of education versus actual learning science behind how kids learn, right? And where our priorities are and that kind of thing. Having a what's that? Changing workforce, right? Exactly. There was a hint at jobs being replaced by a little box, right? So a super prescient thing right now is we're seeing the first driverless cars introduced in Philadelphia this fall right now, and we know that. I talked to an Uber driver in Boston last weekend who told me how happy he was being an Uber driver, and he had left his other jobs and was. I wanted to say, guy, you're not going to have a job in a couple of years, you know, like you can't bank on this, you know. So a huge issue there about how is our educational system changing to adapt to the demands of automation and how that's going to change the workforce, right? And so lots and lots of issues.
Authentic assessment and different audiences for like what does it mean to produce, what does it mean to make, what is authenticity when we're talking about the types of things that we ask, the types of inquiry that students undertake, and in relation to like their peers and other sorts of community members. Those are a couple more that I thought.
A lot of questions that we can come up with just out of the trailer, right? So again, we're hoping that film will be a vehicle for dialogue. All right, do you want to?
Yeah, all right. So as promised, we're to the more participatory part of today's lunch. What we'd like to do is ask you for one or two questions that you would be interested in posing right now, and put you on the spot basically for asking them. And then take, what time is it right now, Todd? Actually.
I don't know, I forgot my phone.
There we go. And take about 15 minutes to talk about them and to really get to know each other and engage in the type of dialogue that we are talking about. And then pull it together for a few minutes at the very end and then send you off on a beautiful Friday. So I will start us off just because there might be some stage fright with asking a question and give you some time to think about it. But one thing I do want to think about are who in this community might want to, or might, would I, you guys are seeing the very authentic, I did not exactly think of this question ahead of time. Who in this community would we like to engage with around the questions of the film? Like the film. That's one. I'm especially thinking too about, like, one of my answers already would be like the creators of Academy High. I would actually really enjoy being in a dialogue with them based on some stuff that they've said already and put out. So like this conversation here would be helpful. Academy High is the new private school that's opening in Research Park. They have great press materials. You can learn a lot about them there.
Research Park started it, or?
No, it's a group of parents. I don't know. They were shooting for like 40, 50. I went to one of the info sessions, and I don't remember off the top of my head. I think the classes would ideally get to about 100 students each later, but that might be, now I'm kind of hitting the edge of my...
Next fall, yeah. They just hired somebody from the East Coast that had started some private schools before.
Yeah, we can also talk about that. Yeah. All right, Todd, I'm going to...
Questions about film, or are they questions?
They could be.
They could be.
So.
Or are they questions just in general?
In general.
In general.
In general. But on Saturday morning, we will have we'll obviously have more cells than this, right? Because we'll have time slots. And, so one cell at least will be devoted just to the film. And so there might be people come to EdCampCU that haven't gone to the film and have other questions. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but we will definitely have a dedicated slot just for the film. But as far as the day goes, anything
Yeah.
else?
Todd, what might you ask? I'll put you in charge of one group. This is why it's better like in the morning when you have coffee and pastries and you're thinking about it. You're like, oh, I have half an hour to think of my question. What might I put up? Though you are not like required to actually ask a question if you attend.
So I think both kind of drawing from the film, but also from my work over the last year on the K12CS.org science framework. One of the things that we were having to ask as we're looking to roll out computer science education for all kids is what is essential for all kids to learn? And I think the film kind of brings that up too. What is it that every kid should learn? I've certainly heard people have pretty spirited discussions about what every kid is. When do you ever use that as a total waste? Or kids don't know anything about financial literacy, for instance. They need to know that. So I think maybe reopening that conversation in terms of content and what is it that all kids should know.
All right. All right, well, let's take these two questions. We have such a small group. I think 2 questions would be a lovely way to split it up. So in the spirit of EdCamps, choose which conversation you think would be most interesting to engage with. If you'd like to swap at some point during the conversations, you're welcome to. It's not in any sort of sense rude or anything like that. But I'm going to be over on this side closer to the pizza asking my question, and then Todd will be over here on the Green Street side asking his. Briefly, we wanted to, we weren't able to be joined today by Sarah and Michelle, who are they're seniors, 2 undergraduate students who have started an EdCamp registered student organization, EdCamp at UIUC. But we did want to mention that they're doing great work and they're a part of our organizing team, and I really wanted to give a nod to them and for their work in ongoing ways. But we wanted to close very briefly by looking ahead and by leaving you with some of the questions that we're working on in hopes to make those questions apparent so that you can maybe ruminate about them and help us think through them as well. But looking forward, we have obviously in 2 weeks we'll be hosting EdCampCU, and then in the winter we'll be convening on Saturday, January 28th. It'll be the 2nd Saturday of the semester, and so in that way, kind of get up and running for the semester. But it's a nice time for both university folks, the area schools, to be coming together, and we'll be hosting that, like I said, at the College of Ed. And then the Urbana Public Schools seem really interested in being the consistent host for the June EdCamps, and we're really happy and thankful for that. What's nice too about these opportunities, each of the EdCamps will offer professional development hours for in-service teachers. And so what we are also seeing too is a nice sort of balance between who's able to provide those hours across the different EdCamps. And so we really see the gesture of Urbana asking not only to host as a space in the summer, but also offering up PDHs, and we want to also thank the MSTE office for helping us with, on the university side, for being able to offer the PDHs. It's really important for in-service teachers, and we're really thankful for that. Todd, do you want to talk about the questions that we are?
Yep, so we'll leave you with some of the things that we are working on internally. Our big thing is how can we increase the diversity of voices that come to EdCamps, right? How do we get people from populations that haven't been represented already and get their voices heard and into the mix? And then the other one, and we kind of made some movement on this one at the last EdCamp, but so we have these great conversations and ideas are thrown up and wrestled with, but how do we move beyond conversations where it's appropriate? How do we actually move from talking about it to doing something about it and making these conversations start to manifest themselves into something concrete? And then Katrina and I are thinking through what is our role in all of that, right? Because I mean, EdCamps are about the participants and we're the organizers, and so yeah, those are kind of some of the issues that we're trying to work on right now.
What do you have for part of the answer for the last one?
Well, there's 2 questions there, Joe. Which one?
So the first, how do you move beyond that conversation?
So at the last EdCamp, we had, and just like I was telling you how some sessions start off with a question and they quickly kind of snake their way into something else, but I don't even remember what the question started as, but
It was broader than, but also could be read as.
yeah. Well, anyway, the conversation ended up after 50 minutes of there's this group of 15, 20 people that decided they were going to start a Champaign-Urbana opt-out of testing movement. And I think people met once after EdCamp, and there have been lots of online conversations. And I think those are still going. And so like, something started as a result of that. So we're not really sure. And a lot of it is just people having the time. And it's one thing to ask a question, but it's another thing to be passionate enough about it to actually put your time in to make something happen. And so maybe part of our role is helping people organize and navigate that. I'm not really sure. But
Yeah, I think the second question is touchy on our end, because I see my role as like helping, like as one of the organizers, is helping organize the conversation, the space for the conversation to happen. Whether or not I agree with the question, I have very strong opinions about said question, etc. But like that the conversation is supported in happening through like the ground rules we try to promote at the beginning, and through having the space and time and so forth. So I think it's something as organizers, like that park conversation was met by some thoughtfulness by the Urbana admin after, I met with them after as like a debrief, and they were like, tell us more about what your role, like are you thinking about this? Because privately and personally, I am super in favor of like various opt-out movements, right? For lots of different reasons, to wax poetic about. But as an organizer, I need to be really thoughtful about like, am I now speaking for EdCampCU? Is EdCampCU like promoting these conversations? And that's where I try to like more edge on, you can't be neutral, but try to be thoughtful about the intentions of the space that we're trying to construct as a, right? But yeah, and saying like, people have these questions, we're a space for them to ask them.
Well, so what about like, EdCamp Boston? What do they have these pods? What happens?
That's the beauty of us being a very different EdCamp, is that they don't.
It would be very unlikely for you to go to a place like EdCamp Boston or EdCamp Chicago and engage in that type of conversation.
It's much more centered. It is in really lovely ways, and sometimes very problematic ways, very centered around technology use in classroom instruction. That's predominantly, and like EdCamps are often disseminated like predominantly through Twitter, right? So you have engaged educators who are technologically savvy. When I went up to EdCamp Chicago 2 years ago, and I had known one of the organizers really well, but it was like, I think they had like 200 white people for like representing EdCamp Chicago, but they're not having that conversation at all. They're like, great, we're all here, we're excited, and at the end of the day, we'll give out an iPad mini to your already well-resourced schools. And so I think that these types of conversations are, while we really want to challenge ourselves in them, and we're achieving some things with that. Right now, it's important, I think, as organizers to be asking them, where other organizers are in different places on a spectrum of asking.
So EdCamp like Chicago or EdCamp Boston, they're more focused on technology in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How do I do EdCamp? How can I play with it? And which are really real questions. How do I use Google Classroom? Like, how do I use it well with my students? That's a real.
It's a different general focus, and then within their focus, sometimes you can use very specific things, right? That are not about.
Coming out with
They're like some.
more knowledge of how to do something. Maybe the parents are coming.
There's no parents don't go. Admin aren't there.
Your
Community
pool of
members aren't there.
participants
Pre-service.
is gonna be
It is
a very
in-service
narrow
teachers.
slice of the community.
So people have been like really excited when they've gotten, like when I was talking to like she's like, one EdCamp was really excited when they got three parents there. So we're both asking for a lot, and I think that's the goal is big and messy and complex, political, on purpose, and so with that comes like us struggling with it being big and messy and complex and political, but I do see that, again, coming back to like what is our role in doing so, I do see that as a thing that I need to do, and then because I also see it as part of this community, is something that I hope to help foster in the community itself. All right, so we have our contact information. That's the last slide. We have our contact information. These are our Twitter handles. Alex wasn't able to make it today. He teaches 4th grade, so he is with the little one. Well, I guess not so little right now, but he's with them. But please contact us, and like I said, you are all more than invited on Saturday the 16th for the screening, and then, Friday the 16th for the screening, and Saturday the 17th for EdCamp itself. Thank you.